What up? Yo, I got another one for you today. Yo, today I want to talk about yeah, my time as a corrections officer. Yeah. So, further ado, let's get this thing on and pop. So, give you a little rundown. I'm just going to speak about my experience as a corrections officer. Um, just as an overall. So myself, I was a county corrections officer for almost 10 years um, for a county in New Jersey. I'm not going to say what county because I'm not going to, throw people under the bus. Um, and this is my experience. When I talk to some of my friends and some of my brothers that work for state, they have similar situations, but since state is a whole lot bigger and you can be moved around to different areas of the state, it changes the dynamic, but it still tends to be the same. Being in the county that I was at, small, well, think about it. You're in one building there's nowhere else to expand to. There's nowhere else to go. You can't get relocated anywhere. At one time, we had a minimum security facility, so you can get relocated to there, but you're always coming back to the maximum. But so how do you become a corrections officer in the state of New Jersey? New Jersey has what they call the New Jersey Civil Service Test. So if you want to get a job working for the state or working for the county, you take this test. It's for numerous or various different jobs within the state. You can be a secretary, you can work for the Department of Health, Department of Community Affairs, these are state, Department of Corrections, state, or county level. They have the same thing. You can work for the county building, different departments. But so what the civil service test does is it gives an opportunity for people in the community to get jobs, to work in a community, a good paying job, to work for the state, for the township, for the county. And as you see how these branch out, they're still under civil service, a majority of the jobs. Law enforcement, which corrections in the state of New Jersey is law enforcement. To become a police officer, you take the civil service test. There's another avenue you can take, which is called the Chiefs test. So you have civil service test, you have the Chiefs test. Chiefs test, that's a separate test you take specifically for law enforcement. Civil service test is the same thing. The counties and states will pull off of this Chiefs test. I forget how they do it off of the civil service test, but I forget how they do it off the Chiefs test. But both of them you can be picked off of for law enforcement. Then you have the third, which are the New Jersey State Police. They're their own entity, their own test. They're not under civil service, so that's a whole different ballgame. So what I'm going to talk about is corrections and county corrections. Corrections as a whole, as a corrections officer, you are a sworn-in peace officer within the state. So you have that same responsibility within all 50 states. You have powers of arrest. You have the right to carry off duty. Those are your main two things. Because you are a sworn in, and I say the word peace officer, not police officer. What separates corrections from regular street cops are the schooling. So the academy. When the Corrections Academy for county, the Corrections Academy was 3 months. Pretty much your little mini boot camp for corrections. State corrections is different. I think they're almost 6 months, but they're different. If you have a state certification, you can drop down to work in county. But if you have a county certification, you have to go through the state's academy. Okay, that was already said. So what differentiates police officers from corrections officers on a high level are the academy. Corrections Academy is 3 months. The regular police department academy is 6 months. We both go through criminal law, which is Title 2C, which is criminal law. We go through handcuffing, searching, everything that encompasses being a peace officer, part of it. Firearms, we have to qualify the same. So if on the correction side, if I couldn't make a range with my department, you heard I said the word department, I can jump on board with a regular police department, or it could be, say, police department, sheriff's department. Anyone who's a certified law enforcement instructor or firearms instructor can certify you. So the difference is, let's say you have the 3 months there, which are the same, and then they break off into what they call EVOC, Emergency Vehicle Operations course or something like that. So when they learn how to drive on the street, do pitman maneuvers, all that wild stuff. Title 29, which is the motor vehicle code. So when you get your traffic tickets and all that stuff, that's Title 29. Make sure I remember this correctly. I mean, if I'm not, leave me a comment in the bottom, correct me on that. Square me away. I think there might be one other facet. So that's the differences. Now, you can switch over to the police side. There are ways. The easiest way would be, and the more expensive way would be for them to run you through the academy again. Run you through their academy. That's one. Another way, and they've been doing this lately, I almost got picked up for a police department going through this method, but then I got beat out by someone else who lived in the county and, all the politics. But what they were going to do with me is, since I have that first part of the academy, I would still work with a training officer, pretty much riding shotgun, with the training officer until I got everything else completed. So what they would do is inject me into the other courses. So let's say the emergency vehicle course comes up in the academy. They take me off the road or from my PTO, and put me into that course in the academy. And then when I'm done, I come back to the department and I work. And then there's another course that I have to get. They take me from work, put me into the academy, then bring me back until I've completed the whole curriculum. And then, I'm certified to be a full sworn-in police officer. That's another avenue. But, just giving you guys a breakdown on how to become a corrections officer, and if you wanted to make the transition over. So, my experience as a corrections officer. It doesn't matter what facility you work in, you're still a corrections officer. You're still going to deal with the same things that every other department deals with. Let's say on the administrative side and on the correctional side. Just that some departments or jails are worse than others, and some not as worse. But you are part of your environment. So this one friend of mine, we used to have banter back and forth because she worked in this super bad jail, whereas like my jail compared to hers was middle of the road, so you had super bad jail up here, you had ours, middle of the road, and you had super bad jail here. We would get some people back and forth, but we weren't as bad as those two. But you still have your problems. You still have your fights, you still have your gang hits, you still have shanks, you still deal with the same class of people. You have your misdemeanors, your short timers, your sexual assault or sex offenders, and your murderers, robbers, the whole 9 yards. So you're still going to have the same clientele, just that the environment might be more hostile, but you still have it. So you're still exposed to the same. I don't want to beat this thing to the ground, but so my experience, Honestly, working with the inmates isn't as bad as what people think. So typically, what happens is when you mention to someone that you work for corrections, the first thing they say is like, "Oh man, like that must be a really hard job." Is it stressful? Yes. Depends on your environment. When I first started working at my place, it was mandatory 16-hour days. I was third shift covering the first shift when they called out. We were understaffed. So the first few years, I worked damn near 16 hours a day, 5 days a week. If I can get a split, then that means I was working 12 that one day. But once I couldn't get a split, back to the 16. Never had an 8-hour day. Um, so that exhausting part hurts your judgment. I'm not going to get into the weeds of some of the things that happen, but it's not as bad as what you think. Because once you're seasoned, when you're a new jack and I'm going to say chasing waterfalls, because now you're a rookie, like a rookie cop. So you're trying to make a name. You're trying to stick everything. You're trying to be completely by the book. You're trying to chase down everybody doing something. You have contraband coming here. You smell smoke over here because somebody's smoking, And then when they know you're a rookie, they do these things to watch you run back and forth like a madman. They got me like that. Someone would start smoking on the one end, put it out, just so I would smell it and run down there so they could smoke down at the other end. And as they're walking by, you smell smoke, but you can't do anything because you can't find anything. It was just a madhouse. Then when you learn what we call jail, because really and truly, they're in jail, you're in jail. I'm locked up with you for my time there, for my 8-hour shift, and then I'll get put to another location, my other 8-hour shift, or I might stay there for all 16. So I'm with you. Just I get furloughed, I go home. But once you've been doing it for a while, you know the ropes. Working with the inmates isn't bad at all. You wheel and deal. You make your stay as easy as possible with the least amount of friction. I mean, there's things that happen that right in front of you that you have to handle a fight. Someone's trying to hurt someone else. You have to protect them because you are care and custody. You don't just let a free-for-all happen. So you do follow your rules. I've had inmates admit of what they've done. Inmates telling me, a story about what they did. I never want to get involved in that because then you're going to court and you're testifying against this work. It's like my job here is to make sure you're safe, make sure everybody else is safe, make sure you get your 3 hots in a cot, and that's it. You have your visits and so forth. So working with the inmates isn't as bad. And since it's county, this is where it can get dicey. So if you're one of those corrections officers that's a real jerk to the inmates, they know that and they know they will see you out there because you're county corrections. You live in the county. Seen inmates many a times. I lived in one area, and I'm walking up to my mailbox and hear beep 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 beep. I kid you not. A week later, I'm on one of the cell blocks, and I had this one inmate come up like, "Hey, Officer Rob." He's like, "You hear me beep the horn at you last week? Yo, that was me." Yeah, he was a gangbanger. Yeah, he had some rank too. He had some stain to him. He was a gangbanger. I was like, "Oh, okay, yo, what's up?" But it revolved because my rapport was good. I never, even to this day, I don't worry about that. I never worried about that because it depends on what kind of officer you are. I've seen officers that were picked on in high school, so now they have this position of authority, so they're going to hold the boot on the throat of the person who's lesser than them. I've seen that. And then those are the ones that make sure they carry off duty because they're afraid. Then you have the ones that are just so weak they get run over all the time, and then they're bringing contraband in. We've had instances where officers were having relations with inmates, female officers were inmates. The male officers couldn't work on the female side because at one period of time, there were a lot of female inmates becoming pregnant. Oh yeah, it's a madhouse. But as I digress, I've seen a whole lot in the jail. But working in the jail isn't bad working with the inmates. It's working with the administration and your coworkers. The coworkers/administration, coworkers part, there's a lot of cliques in working in corrections. And I hear it on the state side also. It becomes a little bit more racial on that, but I'm not going to touch on that. A lot of cliques. And if you're like with me, I'm military, And as a matter of fact, most of us that were military working there, and the ones that were prior, we seen things totally different than the regular officers, because you have officers who got hired there that were from the streets and took the civil service test and passed the background, passed everything else, and they become an officer, but they still have that street in them. Some of them are gangbangers. It's hard to weed that out of the process, but you do have your cliques, and the cliques revolve around certain supervisors. So certain supervisors have their clique. And with me, I'm not a cliquish person. I'm just a team person. I'm ride or die for my team, loyal to the team. So whatever goes down, I'm riding with you. Like we're riding this thing till the wheels fall off. Something bad happens, I'll roll with you. So there was no problem or fear of me being a sellout or snitch, but my thing was like, I'm not going to conform to anyone's team. I don't play that team thing. I belong to a fraternity. I have my own team, but when it comes to the jail, like I don't feel like I have to belong to your little clique just to get a better post, just to be able to do certain things. And then when another supervisor comes on that's not friends with that supervisor, then you get crapped on because of that. It's a petty game, and it revolves around the supervisors. If you're part of that supervisor's clique, you get taken care of. So being that I wasn't part of any clique, I got crapped on all the time, all the crappy details. I was on the murderers wing all the time. The younger kids wing, not kids, but younger guys that are in trouble, which is a pain in the butt to deal with them all the time. If I got a break, it was maybe 10% of the time. And that's because, let's say, the captain realized, like, man, like they've been having you do this all the time, and he might say something. And then what happens? 2 weeks, I get taken care of, and then I get punished more because then they look at it like I said something. But yes, if you're not on a team, they will burn you. The other flip side too is that I never had any infractions. I got one write-up in almost that whole 10 years, and that was from me being late 3 times in 1 month. One was not being able to not clocking in and out right, and one was being late, because those go together. I had one write-up in that time period. Majority of people that work there get 5 days, 10 days. People have had 6-month suspensions over either lying to internal affairs, stuff. Not me, But on the flip side, I'm a team rider also, but I don't get in trouble for the stupid stuff. So a lot of my experience was the most toxic work environment I've ever worked in. I could work anywhere and after that. So I guess I'll give thanks, give homage to it, because it made me who I am. I can actually go anywhere because it was that toxic of an environment from your coworkers. The inmates, you expect that from them, but from your coworkers. There's a lot of fist fights that happen amongst coworkers in the parking lots for no reason. I got caught up in one of them. That's what made me say, you know what, this is enough. When you have a supervisor that knows another officer is going to try to hurt you, and he turns his back and just lets it happen. To me, I'm like, this isn't supposed to be the streets. This is law enforcement. We don't do this. And that's where I worked my way out. I already had a plan on getting out anyway. I was working on my IT background anyway. So it just made me speed that up. And I'm happy where I'm at now. But yeah, my experience was bad. I ended up becoming a firearms instructor. With the administration, it all depends on who the warden is and his administration is. If you have one that's pro-military, if you have to go out on military, you won't be beat up that much. If you have one that's anti-military, when you come back, you're going to go through hoops and valleys. In the very beginning, I actually had to contact my ombudsman because I was being harassed. I have another officer, same thing. He ended up quitting because of it. He didn't fight it. They cut his medical, they did all kinds of stuff. And then it's not even the administration, but then your coworkers think that if you're out, like I got deployed, Iraq, PSD team member, I'm all across, the southern part of Iraq. In their eyes, you were out on vacation because you weren't there in that fight. They're there doing 16-hour days. Since you're gone, somebody has to pick up your shift. So they're angry at that. So then you get crapped on because of that. So then you get the bad post because you weren't in the building, as they call it, the whole time. They think you're on vacation. There's times I might get pulled on military for a few months. I was home for 1 week, gone for 2 weeks. Home for 1 week, gone for 2 weeks. I was on vacation with them. They seen their family more than I did in 6 months than I, or I'm sorry, within a month than I did in 6 months. So, but this is my experience. Not to, I don't want to go into overtime in this whole thing. So I'll break down some other aspects of it. But is it a good stepping stone to get into regular law enforcement? No, I think it hurts a lot of people because when you get into the correctional environment, majority of people end up getting suspensions. And then when you try to switch over to a regular department, that gets looked at. A lot of times the regular departments know what goes on in the jail, so they overlook a lot of things, but it's not a very good place to start off at, as far as I'm concerned. But you still do get the badge and gun. You still are part of law enforcement, so you do get that good feeling of being able to do something good for the community. But that's enough said about that. That's my experience in corrections, just in a nutshell. That's a drop of what it is, and I gave you kind of an idea of how to get into corrections if you want to in New Jersey. But if you have any questions, hit me up. Drop some comments down in the bottom. And let me know just any things you want me to bring up or any questions you have about corrections. And I'll try to get at you. Everybody have a good day. Peace.